4 months after Trump's trade war began, Canadians aren't celebrating, they're bracing for impact. The America First plan was supposed to restore dominance, but instead, it's isolating the US and bleeding its economy. Our allies didn't wait around. They found new partners, new supply chains, and left America behind. This is the story of how America handed away its leverage, and how the world, led by Canada, didn't hesitate to fill the void. For decades, American agri-tech and Brazilian agriculture were not just business partners, they were deeply intertwined, forming a powerful alliance that shaped global food production. US technology fueled Brazil's rise as an agricultural powerhouse, while Brazil's vast farmlands became a crucial market for American innovation. Together, they set the pace for the world's food supply, their cooperation seen as unbreakable. But when US trade policy turned erratic, marked by sudden tariffs, shifting regulations, and unpredictable negotiations, Brazil's patience finally snapped. Years of trust began to unravel, as uncertainty replaced reliability, and Brazilian leaders started to question whether the partnership was still worth the risk. Canada saw an opportunity and stepped in, offering not just stability but also the latest in agricultural technology, everything the US once provided, but with a promise of consistency and respect. Brazilian agribusinesses, eager for dependable partners, welcomed Canada with open arms. As a result, Brazilian agribusiness shifted contracts northward, redirecting billions in trade. The impact was immediate and devastating for American factories and communities across the Midwest, where assembly lines fell silent, and once thriving towns faced economic decline. This wasn't about losing on quality or innovation, it was a failure of diplomacy, vision, and foresight. The US lost its edge not because it couldn't compete, but because it failed to nurture its most important relationships. Brazil didn't just swap suppliers, they replaced a foundational partner, rewriting the rules of global agriculture. The scars left across America's heartland are a stark reminder. Sometimes the greatest betrayals are self-inflicted, born from neglect rather than defeat. Japan, a nation renowned for its relentless pursuit of stability and reliability, has always placed energy security at the heart of its economic strategy. For decades, the United States was seen as the cornerstone of that vision, a dependable partner with vast resources and cutting-edge technology. American natural gas, shipped across the Pacific, was supposed to fuel Japan's future, powering its cities, industries, and innovation. The relationship was more than just business. It was a symbol of trust and shared ambition. Japanese companies invested heavily in US LNG projects, and both nations celebrated a new era of energy cooperation. But as political uncertainty and policy swings in Washington became the new normal, Japan's confidence began to erode. What once felt like a safe bet now seemed fraught with risk. Japanese leaders, watching the headlines, started to question whether America could still be counted on as a stable supplier. Quietly, Canada stepped in. With its reputation for steady governance and long-term planning, Canada offered Japan what it craved most: certainty. Canadian LNG deals promised decades of reliable supply, free from the drama and unpredictability that now plagued US politics. In response, Japanese energy giants began to shift their investments northward. Billions of dollars that once flowed into US projects were rerouted to Canada, fundamentally altering the map of global energy trade. This wasn't just a business decision, it was a strategic move to decouple Japan's energy security from the volatility of American politics. The consequences for the US Gulf Coast were immediate and severe. Promised booms evaporated before they could begin. Construction sites were abandoned, investments dried up, and thousands of jobs disappeared almost overnight. Entire supply chains, once poised for growth, simply vanished. Japan didn't just buy gas elsewhere, it redirected the flow of future prosperity. The ripple effects were felt across American communities, from empty plants to declining stock prices, as the promise of shared growth slipped away. All because, in the end, trust, the invisible foundation of every partnership, was lost. And with it, a silent but profound energy divorce reshaped the destinies of two nations. Germany's industrial machine once relied on American suppliers, but the chaos of America First made US partners too risky. Canada, with its stable trade pact and reliable supply, became Germany's new go-to. German giants shifted investments and supply chains to Canada, leaving US manufacturers stranded. Advanced manufacturing jobs vanished, replaced by uncertainty and layoffs. America's industrial heartland was left behind as Germany quietly moved on. For decades, NAFTA was the backbone of North American industry, binding the US, Mexico, and Canada into a single, powerful manufacturing force. Factories thrived, jobs multiplied, and cross-border trade flourished, creating a sense of shared prosperity across the continent. The agreement was more than just a trade deal, it was a symbol of trust and cooperation, fueling economic growth and innovation in all three countries. But over time, political tensions began to rise. Threats of tariffs, sudden policy changes, and growing instability shattered the trust that once held the partnership together. Leaders clashed, and uncertainty spread through boardrooms and factory floors alike, making it harder for businesses to plan for the future. In response, Mexico started to look north, not to the US, but to Canada. New trade agreements were signed, and soon, Canadian goods began flowing into Mexican ports. Foreign investors, sensing opportunity, shifted their focus, pouring resources into Mexican factories that now relied on Canadian components. The consequences for American border towns were devastating. Once bustling communities saw their economic lifeblood dry up as supply chains bypassed them entirely. Main streets emptied, factories closed, and families faced an uncertain future. The maquiladora model, once dependent on American parts, was re-engineered. Now, Canadian components powered the assembly lines and new factories proudly displayed Canadian flags, signaling a dramatic shift in North American manufacturing. In the end, we didn't just build a wall, we built economic distrust. The physical barriers mirrored the invisible ones that now divided former partners, leaving workers and businesses on both sides of the border anxious and uncertain. Mexico found a new gate to the world, forging ahead with new trade routes and partners. Meanwhile, US regions that once thrived on cross-border commerce were left behind, struggling to adapt to a new economic reality. America's tech partnership with India was built on talent and trust, but harsh immigration policies and anti-immigrant rhetoric drove Indian innovators away. Canada welcomed them, streamlining visas and offering stability. The result? A brain drain, startups, and investment flowing north. Indian companies shifted contracts and investments to Canada, bypassing the US in tech, pharma, and agriculture. Even students chose Canada over America. America didn't just lose talent, it lost the future. South Korea's tech giants once thrived on US partnerships. But erratic trade policy made America a liability. Canada offered stability, clean energy, and critical minerals. Korean firms invested billions in Canadian R&D, battery plants, and AI labs. US tech and defense sectors lost ground in future industries. The economic and security alliance weakened as South Korea diversified away. America's influence and its edge slipped away. The UK-US special relationship was once unbreakable. But post-Brexit, the US offered only demands and instability. Britain turned to Canada for a stable, respectful partnership. British firms shifted R&D, finance, and energy investments north. The emotional and economic bond collapsed. America became the risky option. By taking our oldest ally for granted, we forced them to find a new one. This isn't just a trade shift, it's a global realignment. America isn't being outcompeted, it's being abandoned by allies who've had enough of chaos. From Brazil to the UK, the world found stability in Canada. This is about losing relevance, not just contracts. The world didn't wait for America to recover, it moved on. The silence from abandoned factories is the sound of a superpower in decline. The story isn't over.